Good afternoon and welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier, and thank you once again for stopping by. Let me start with some macro thoughts. The Spectator has published an 800-word response to a question they asked an unnamed Downing Street official, and it gives us an insight into how Downing Street are viewing the state of the current negotiations. And I'll just give you one sentence. The negotiations will probably end this week. Varadkar doesn't want to negotiate. And this goes back to what I was writing about at the beginning of August in the article, What's Your Road, Man? And I asked, the key question is this: can Boris Johnson self-eject Britain? And I said, yes, he can, in brackets. Subsequently, can he be stopped? Was another question I asked, and I said, subsequently, does not look like it. And I'm going to stick with that, which essentially means that sterling has got a lot further to fall from where it is now at 122.83. You know, I've been watching these spaghetti westerns, and in it there was this preacher who was quoting the book of Ecclesiastes, and I've been reading that with a considerable amount of interest. The tone is so amazing. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher, utterly meaningless, everything is meaningless. Generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. All go to the same place, all come from dust, and to dust all return, a time for everything. A good name, this is from Ecclesiastes 7, is better than fine perfume, and the day of death better than the day of birth, which made me think. It is better to go to a house of mourning than to go to a house of feasting. For death is the destiny of everyone. The living should take this to heart. And I had a friend who always goes to any fellow who passes away, he'll always go to their house. So it's better to go to a house of mourning than to go to a house of feasting. For death is the destiny of everyone. The living should take this to heart. And of course, then this took me back to the Quran, Inna lillahi wa inna ilahi rajiun. And excuse my pronunciation, because I never learned Arabic and I had to read the Quran in translation, and I'll discuss the nature of translators because some were so much better than others. And this is a part of a verse from the Quran which translates to, indeed to God we belong and to God we shall return. And I think that was thematically what that book of Ecclesiastes was saying in some ways. Look at this, these photographs from Sergei Kabankov via Kenya Pics, Lake Bogoria Nature Reserve. I've never been, I'd love to go, it's where the flamingos come. It looks fantastic, I must say. Smithsonian Magazine, a hub where humpback whales share their songs. Isn't that beautiful? Humpback whales are the great crooners of the deep. Males are known to emit songs of complex melodies comprised of moans, cries, and chirps, and their choruses can last for hours at a time. Humpback populations also transmit their songs to one another in a west to east direction, so that a ditty might spread thousands of miles across the sea. What a thought. Now, as Kara Giannio reports for the New York Times, a new study has identified one location where humpback whales seem to converge to share their songs, the Kermadec Islands, a remote spot off the coast of New Zealand. The song we hear in Wales and New Caledonia this year, next year we'll hear elements of that song in the whales in Tonga. It's really quite an extraordinary article. Have a listen, have a read, it's really beautiful. Previously, transmission hubs along Wales' migratory routes had been elusive to scientists. according to the study authors, and the Kermadecs may represent just one piece of the puzzle. I've been watching short clips from the movie The Joker. I know there's been a lot of furore, but I must say I think Joaquin Phoenix is one of the best actors of all time, very mercurial, unputdownable. And of course, The Joker blew through all the records, $55 million budget, took nearly double that over the weekend. This is a trailer that I found, well, two trailers. Joaquin Raphael Phoenix, what a personal story as well. If you delve into his story, they were in a cult, they came out of it. It's quite an extraordinary story. And of course, there is a Gary Glitter song, but I'm not going to grace him with even referring to it because he's a complete obnoxious character and fiend. But Nat King Cole's Smile. And when you look at these trailers and then you listen to that song, and it has a completely different meaning, but very powerful one as well. I'm looking forward to watching that. I think it's at the cinema in Nairobi. Political reflections. If Turkey does anything that I, in my great and unmatched wisdom, consider to be off limits, I will totally destroy and obliterate the economy of Turkey. I've done it before, said Trump. As I've stated strongly before, and just to reiterate, if Turkey does anything that I, in my great and unmatched wisdom, consider to be off limits, I will destroy and obliterate the economy of Turkey. They must, with Europe's and others, watch over. Philip Gurevich tweeted President Donald Ozymandias. I met a traveller from an antique land who said, two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand, half sunk a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear, my name is Ozymandias, King of Kings, look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. Besides the overarching point that the Kurds have been trashed by practically everybody, now including Trump. Northman Trader says both the left and the right still haven't caught on that he is playing 5D chess by laying the groundwork for an insanity defense and an all-inclusive pardon deal. I prefer the quote from the end of December last year. He's trapped, he's playing poker, holding 2 threes and suddenly putting all of his chips in. It's pure emotion, the mark of a panicking amateur. And to that point, I was writing about this over the weekend, and I said Xi can rely on a US president whose dereliction of his international duty is now in plain sight. And I was referencing Wang Yi, who was saying China will not interfere in the internal affairs of the United States, and we trust that the American people will be able to sort out their own problems. He said in response to questions around Trump's pursuit of Biden and his personal political agenda, trumping, as it were, the US's international agenda. Simon Sharma, Trump is the bad guy's patsy, Kim, Putin, Erdogan, the weakest and most ignorant POTUS in history. But even so, the unconscionable betrayal of the Kurds is a breathtaking capitulation. Let's hope he doesn't capitulate with the Hong Kong folks either. My article of the weekend was China turns 70. I quoted Don DeLillo, longing on a large scale makes history. But let me just reiterate the last paragraph. The folks in Hong Kong whom Xi is seeking to unmask so he can exercise algorithmic control over them are in open rebellion. Joshua Wong told German media Hong Kong ist das neue Berlin, referencing the Ich bin ein Berliner speech by John F. Kennedy, given in June 1963 in West Berlin. I am sure Xi sees Hong Kong and Taiwan like a virus and he's looking to impose a quarantine just like he has imposed on Xinjiang. The Chinese dream has become a nightmare at the boundaries of the Han Empire. The world in the 21st century exhibits viral wildfire and exponential characteristics and feedback loops which only become obvious in hindsight. I would venture that Xi's high water mark is behind him. Shorting the renminbi is a bit of a no-brainer. The pork apocalypse speaks to a very fragile food situation. The periphery requires a lot more finesse than more blunt force. But he can rely on a US president whose dereliction of his international duty is now in plain sight. And that's when I was referencing Wang Yi's comments. According to the marketeer, Nordea are predicting that the tariff-adjusted renminbi rate is 7.5. We're currently at 712.25. This via DT App Cap, powerful and shocking commentary from Jamil Andolini in the Financial Times. Have a read of that. China marked 70 years of communist rule this year with its largest ever military parade. Here are some key moments in the past 7 decades. That's from South China Morning Post. Then we have this big furore with the National Basketball Association, which has now rebuked the Houston Rockets boss after he praised Hong Kong. A tweet by the general manager of the Houston Rockets basketball team supporting the Hong Kong protests has sparked outrage in China, leaving the team and the NBA scrambling to limit the damage in the league's fastest growing market. Daryl Morey posted an image on Twitter, which is blocked in China, with the words, "Fight for freedom, stand with Hong Kong" on Friday evening. The Chinese Basketball Association suspended all partnerships with the Rockets, one of the most popular teams in the country, over Morey's improper remarks. That set off similar moves by NBA's main distributors in China, CCTV and Tencent. Shanghai Pudong Development Bank, the Rockets' main China sponsor, suspended its partnership, and sportswear brand Li-Ning cut off all business with the team. The league signed a 5-year extension to its online screening rights deal with Tencent worth $1.5 billion, double the amount paid under its previous contract with the Chinese group. More than 490 million viewers watched games on Tencent's platform last season, nearly triple the number in the previous season. The Chinese statement appeared to condemn Mr. Morey's tweet more strongly, saying the NBA was extremely disappointed by the inappropriate comment and that he has undoubtedly seriously hurt the feelings of Chinese basketball fans. Taobao, Alibaba's online shopping portal, took down Rockets merchandise on Monday, with a company spokesman citing Mr. Tsai's statement that the issue is non-negotiable as one reason, according to Chinese state media. A hashtag asking whether Mr. Morey would be fired was trending on China's microblog platform Weibo. Morey, this time you've really broken the rules. When you foul, you must pay the price. If you fail to change after the foul, then you'll be sent from the court, said CCTV news anchor Kang Hui. Houston Rockets general manager Daryl Morey posted an image on Twitter with the words, "Fight for freedom, stand with Hong Kong." This is a photograph of him. Hu Xin, who I've quoted before and is a mouthpiece for President Xi, Chinese government didn't ban the Rockets, it's Chinese fans that banned it. Under fans' pressure, business platforms are distancing themselves from the rockets for business interests. The rockets have profited in China through the market way. Morey is destroying the rockets market. My conclusions are how this plays out will tell us a lot. We did a mind speak with Dr. Mukisa Kituyu, he's the Secretary General of UNCTAD, and he was talking about platform visibility, so you can see what they've done here. They've switched them off and made them invisible on their platforms. If you're interested in his mind speak session, that link is on Rich Wrap-Ups. Chinese Basketball Association confirms it cancelled all 4 NBA games set for Suzhou in China, October 19 and 20. Now, I went back because of this whole issue about the algorithm control that China is exerting, particularly over Hong Kong. That's why they're seeking to unmask them in order to exert algorithmic control. I went back to a speech which a lot of people poo-pooed, which was Prime Minister Boris Johnson at Unga. It was late at night. Mr. President, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, faithful late-night audience. No one can ignore a gathering force that is reshaping the future of every member of this assembly. I think of new tools that we acquired over which we, the human race, have the advantage. This is not necessarily the case in the digital age. You may keep secrets from your friends, from your parents, your children, your doctor, even your personal trainer. But it takes real effort to conceal your thoughts from Google. Smart cities will pullulate with sensors all joined together by the Internet of Things, bollards communing invisibly with lampposts. This technology could also be used to keep every citizen under round-the-clock surveillance. A future Alexa will pretend to take orders, but this Alexa will be watching you, clucking her tongue and stamping her foot. Your mattress will monitor your nightmares. Your fridge will beep for more cheese. And every one of them minutely transcribing your every habit in tiny electronic shorthand, stored not in their chips or their innards. Nowhere you can find it, but in some great cloud of data that lures ever more oppressively over the human race. We not only leave our indelible spore in the ether, but we are ourselves becoming a resource click by click, tap by tap. Data is the crude oil of the modern economy. We don't know who should own these new oil fields. Can these algorithms be trusted with our lives and hopes? Should the machines, and only the machines, decide whether or not we are eligible for a mortgage or insurance? What surgery or medicine should we receive? Are we doomed to a cold and heartless future in which computer says yes or computer says no, with the grim finality of an emperor in the arena? How do you plead with an algorithm? How do you get it to see the extenuating circumstances? And how do we know that the machines have not been insidiously programmed to fool us or even to cheat us? The same programs, platforms could also be designed for real-time censorship of every conversation, with offending words automatically deleted. Indeed, in some countries this happens today. Digital authoritarianism is not, alas, the stuff of dystopian fantasy, but of an emerging reality. Helpful robots washing and caring for an aging population, or pink-eyed terminators sent back from the future to cull the human race. What will synthetic biology stand for? Restoring our livers and our eyes with miracle regeneration of the tissues, like some fantastic hangover cure? Or will it bring terrifying limbless chickens to our tables? In a tube of fennel, as you may remember, that Zeus punished him by chaining him to a Tartarian crag while his liver was pecked out by an eagle. And every time his liver grew, the eagle came back and pecked it again. And then he's saying the secret genetic code that animates the spirit of every living being. It's very, very powerful speech, actually, which a lot of people laughed at. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your kind attention. And I think goes back to this point of mine that Z's model is one of technocratic authoritarianism. A recent addition to his bookshop was The Master Algorithm by Pedro Domingos, and there's a link to a presentation which I listened to yesterday by the same man. Excellent essay by interview and essay of Amartya Sen, Hopes and Fears for Indian Democracy, that Celestine Monga alerted me to. As you enter his house, there's a photo of one of my favourite poets, Rabindranath Tagore, in the entryway, which serves as a reminder that Sen is often mentioned alongside him as one of Bengal's favourite sons. A number of books, including The Argumentative Indian from 2005, Sen has celebrated the multiculturalism of Indian existence and the capacious nature of the Indian constitution. Both work against the ills of what Sen calls solitarism, or the idea that human beings have one principal identity. Sen has often criticised Modi's sectarianism and has said that his government has taken a quantum jump in the wrong direction on poverty and healthcare. Strong memories of my uncles and cousins, both on my father's and mother's side, being in prison in what the British used to call preventive detention. Not because they'd done anything, but because they could do something terrible against the empire unless they were kept in prison. There was no need for proof that they had done anything terrible. Go back to that Mint Press news article about how the Israelis control the Palestinians in the occupied territories. Similar, but preventative detention taken to a whole new level. There is an act called the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, which was amended this year to give the government the right to designate someone as a terrorist without having to provide any proof and without having judicial review. And that is back again, which I never thought would happen now that we're an independent country. Democracy, often called bourgeois democracy, I always thought that was a complete misdiagnosis of what the problem of social organization is. Sanskrit was, along with mathematics, my favorite subject, he said. The Indian constitution was pretty well based on analysis of the Constituent Assembly, which had some of the finest discussion of what the constitution should be. What it overlooked, I think, as a committed secular democracy is that there is a political group or party or movement that came to get a huge amount of support, which happened in India with the Hindutva movement. They can manipulate the situation pretty sharply. And here I think the Indian Supreme Court is very slow and divided, and despite the good it has done, hasn't been able to be as much of a guardian of pluralism as it could be. Today everything is dominated by hard-nosed, hard Hindutva thinking. The president, prime minister, the leadership are all Hindu. But if you compare that to a dozen years ago, 2007, we had a Muslim president, a Sikh prime minister, a Christian leader of the ruling party. The majority of the parliamentarians were Hindu, but they were not trying to impose their way of thinking over everyone. That's what happened. Now we're suddenly in a position where you can chastise a Muslim for eating beef, which is also very non-classical. If you go to the very old Sanskrit documents like the Vedas, there is nothing prohibiting the eating of beef. So there is a decline not only from secularism and democracy in post-independence India, but also in the understanding of the heritage even of Hindu India. Saying for 1,000 years India was a Buddhist country. The importance of multiple identities is something that comes up time and again in your work, I've noticed. Gandhi was shot by an RSS, Hindu fascist movement member, which is the dominant influence on the BJP today. We didn't feel threatened because they seemed like a fringe, but that fringe gradually became more dominant until the latest election, and they had a massive victory, a victory partially based on political effectiveness. Modi doesn't have the breadth of vision about India, multi-religious, multi-ethnic India. He has been from his childhood relating to the RSS and the propaganda of that perspective. On the other hand, as a political leader, he's dynamic and enormously successful. So there was the Modi factor. India is a country of more than 1 billion people. 200 million of them are Muslim. 200 million of them are Dalit, or what used to be called untouchables. 100 million are what used to be called scheduled tribes, and they get the worst deal in India, even worse than the Dalits. Large proportion of the Hindu population that are skeptical. Many of them have been shot. Many of them have been put in prison. In these circumstances, to say that a majority supports him would be difficult. It's a situation where there are many restrictions. The newspapers don't get government ads, and they probably don't get many private ads either if the government is against you. As a result, it is very hard to have independent TV or newspapers because of difficulties created by the government. A big thing that we know from John Stuart Mill is that democracy is government by discussion. And if you make discussion fearful, you're not going to get a democracy, no matter how you count the votes. Talking about the Falklands War changed the British into becoming nationalists. It didn't last very long, but long enough to get Mrs. Thatcher a massive victory. If you look at the election earlier this year, a part was played by the strong propaganda, a part was played by the fear factor, a part was played by the excitement of the war that was going on between Pakistan and India. So I think I wouldn't say that there has been a victory. There would have been a victory if there was press without fear, censorship from government, and the tyranny of advertising control. If all this hadn't happened and you'd won the election, I would have said yes. I think the world likes success, and I think the Gateses like success, and Modi is so powerful that he's often seen as a success of some kind. I was surprised and shocked, quite frankly, by the news of the Gates Award to Modi. I'm even been more shocked because I'm now learning he was a best friend of Epstein. Talking about famines and a lot of the research he did around the famines, and then talking about when he was a young boy, the Hindu-Muslim riots, including a Muslim day labourer who had come to a largely Hindu area, got knifed by the local Hindu thugs. I was playing in the garden and he came in profusely bleeding. And he came looking for help and water. I shouted to get my father, and I did get a glass of water. He was lying on my lap. My father took him to the hospital, and he unfortunately died there. He told me in an inarticulate way, and my father in a more articulate way, that his Bibi, his wife, had told him not to work in a Hindu area. But he said the children had not eaten anything, and he had to get income to get them a little food. What an interview. Debt campaigners have accused the IMF of encouraging reckless lending by extending $93 billion of loans to 18 financially troubled countries without a debt restructuring program first. JDC said Argentina was merely the most acute example of a wider problem. The IMF encouraging reckless lending in 17 other countries: Afghanistan, Angola, Cameroon, CAR, Chad, Ecuador, Egypt, Ghana, Jordan, Mauritania, Mongolia, Pakistan, Sao Tome and Principe, Sierra Leone, Sri Lanka, Tunisia and Ukraine. I agree with that. Currency markets, let's take a look. Euro dollar 109.87. Dollar index 98.93. The yen is strengthened 107.17. Swiss franc 0.09946, the pound 122.80, the Australian dollar 0.6750, India rupee 71.057, South Korean won 11.9597, the Real 4096, Egypt pound 1630, South African rand 15.1822. Dollar index chart, this is from FX Pit Titan. He's saying the main trend is holding and looking for a break to 100 and then 102, which I agree with, because as I said at the end of the year, if the US economy slows, I can guarantee you the rest of the world will slow further, and therefore people are looking for chinks in the US economy should look elsewhere first. I also, on the 5th of August, was saying Trump seems to be talking down the dollar, but he doesn't appreciate that the dollar is a part of his sanction, linguistic and tariff war arsenal. Euro dollar 109.86. I think 110 is capping clearly at the moment, and I'm looking for it to trade lower, back down to below 109. Sterling, this is the one I think at some point is going to break big and break fast. We're at 122.72. I'm looking for below 120. Again, that chart is from FX Titan. Gold, I'm not bullish about gold. 14.97, it's moving around a lot. We got as low as 14.90 earlier today. Oil has been coiling into a massive triangle since April, had a fake break up on the Saudi news last month and a fake breakdown last week. This is Adam Mancini, currently at $52.78. My target is 56. Sub-Saharan Africa is a split in the works between Zambia and its long-time business partner China, SCNP News. Is there an African country in which the Chinese have found a home? It is Zambia. The Kenneth Kaunda International Airport in the capital, Lusaka, the first billboard that welcomes travelers, is one advertising the services of the Bank of China. Zambia is one of the few countries on the continent where the government-owned Bank of China offers fully fledged banking services in the Chinese currency. Customers can even make deposits and withdrawals in the renminbi. Some sources estimate that there are between 80,000 and 100,000 Chinese in Zambia. Government puts the figure at 20,000, saying that the Chinese have been there since the Tazara Railway, which was built by China in the 1970s to link the copper belt to Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. Zambia borrowed $6.37 billion between 2000 and 2017. Issued Eurobonds worth $2.8 billion between 2012 and 2015. It's been downgraded by Fitch to CCC, which is junk. Fitch estimates that Zambia faces total external debt service payments of $2.4 billion, 9.9% of its GDP in 2019. Yields on dollar bonds are 16 to 20%, somewhere around there, which is default territory. Situation is made worse by the failure to secure an aid package from the IMF. And then the Chinese may be willing to offer some support on the debt front, but they too want to see credible proposals. And I don't think President Lungu's government is credible, essentially. 29th of July, I said Zambia snapped earlier this year. Robert Amsterdam, who I interviewed last year, was saying how Zambia is concerning. They've done ill-considered private borrowing. 4th of April last year, so this has been coming at us for ages. I said a big-ticket blow-up in an African country might be the catalyst. I said Zambia looks like the likely candidate. I noticed at FOCAC last year that Xi Jinping was rowing back from his really gung-ho Africa position, and therefore, with the Eurobond trading at 60 cents, this is a road wreck which is now unfolding in slow motion. Zimbabwe's finance ministry sees GDP contracting 6.5% this year, then rebounding 4.6% next year. They too are in desperate trouble, and President Mnangagwa, who's been eulogizing Mugabe, has failed and is frankly as untenable as his erstwhile mentor. This is President Bongo Gabon coming to the Zeng Ayong Stadium in Libreville, where the crowd chanted Yali, Yali the Great. Have a look at his condition. Excellent article in The Guardian, all about Idi Amin's mastery of the media. Tens of thousands of newly discovered images have shown Idi Amin exploited cutting-edge media technology, populism and radical ideologies to maintain his bloody grip on power in the 1970s. 70,000 pictures were taken by a team of photographers. Have a look. We see how Amin embraced the media, understood its power, how he had a great sense of how media could amplify his ego and his political will. This is one of the photographs where he's giving citizenship to British officials in 1975. South African all shares up 3.75% year to date. Dollar rand is at 15.1816. I will be buying puts on the rand. Egyptian pound steady 1630.95. EGX 30 up 10.71% year to date. Nigerian all share down 14.52% year to date. Ghana Stock Exchange down 11.6% year to date. Uganda's central bank cut its key lending rate by 100 basis points to 9%. Inflation is very, very subdued, 1.9%. Countries at all levels of development risk being mere providers of raw data to those digital platforms while having to pay for the digital intelligence produced with that data by the platform owners. And Winnie Benyamina of Oxfam is addressing exactly that point in a short clip that Nasir Naz shared with me. Kenya struggles to cope with growing number of heroin users. Nairobi all shares up 4.04% year to date. Best performing stocks year to date. Longhorn Publishers up 60%. Kakuzi up 36%. Safaricom 26%. Housing Finance 25%. Portland Cement 15%. Worst performing stocks. Kenya Airways down 71%. Mumias 53%. Nation Media 40%. Kenya Power 31% and BAT 31%. Thank you for listening.